Hi, I'm Andy, I'm a member of IASI and this is my level 4 project. So the video is about bumps and variable terrain, which for me is an area I'm quite comfortable with within my own skiing. And I thought, unlike lots of sort of instructional videos that are out online, as opposed to preaching about this is how it's done, I'd like to just share ideas that work for me personally within my own skiing. I think that hopefully the video will sort of bring to light a few things that maybe some people haven't thought about with their skiing, and hopefully the idea would be it would be a useful resource for other IASI members coming through the system. So the whole video was filmed over the space of 3 days. We had one day which was a powder day in Cervinia, and the next day we did all the piste drills. And then the next day we went over to Verbier and we did all the bumps and variable terrain stuff. And it was all done on a 175 piste ski. I think it's a 15.5 meter radius piste ski. So with this, I don't want to be too technical with it. It's more about tactical stuff, decision making and line choice. But I suppose just to start off with, this is a basic short turn. And then from that form, I like to sort of take that into all the other stuff. So just to keep it really simple, it's quite a nice rounded short turn with not too much performance. And then basic things that maybe vary from person to person. With me personally, I like to have quite a narrow stance and quite a high arm carriage and a very disciplined upper body. But basically that's it, and then I just try and take that form and apply it to all the other areas. So with that basic short turn, it's for me, I like to just try and take that into the off-piste or the bumpy terrain and just try and replicate the same sort of feelings. Obviously you're going to have a little bit of absorption going on and your skis are going to get knocked about a little bit, so it might not necessarily be as tidy, but just try and get the same sort of feeling and it ups the confidence. So I like to choose a relatively steep pitch and do a sort of medium to large sort of size turn, and just get the appropriate sort of blend of edging versus skidding, just to try and get a feel for my descent. So I try and maintain the same speed from point A to point B and just link kind of rounded turns and just get a feel for what's going on under my feet. So I will be skidding quite a lot, but it's deliberate skidding. And it's a really good way of sort of controlling the descent and keeping confident in that sort of environment. So for me, I'm a firm believer in fast hands equaling fast feet. So if I want to move my feet fast, I've got to move my hands fast. There's a little exercise I like to do. I call it a double pole plant, but basically it's 2 pole plants on each side per turn. And if I start to move my hands too much, or I like to drop them down by my sides, swing my shoulders around and things like that, I soon realise that I haven't got time to do that. So it's a really good way of speeding up the pole plant, which in turn can help with the feet. So I start off quite slow, pick up the speed, rein it in, get tighter and tighter with my turns until I lose coordination completely. Stop, start again, repeat, and slowly but surely my feet and my turns start to get a lot quicker. So when I get in a tight bump line, I need to react fast. I've got the muscle memory, I can do it quite easily. So linked in with all this sort of speed of movement stuff, I like to do a Stork Turn. Some people call it a Stork Turn. I sometimes call it an inside ski lift, but anyway, I keep the tip of the ski on the ground, I pick up the inside ski for the turn, time it well with the pole plant, and basically I'm going quick from edge to edge. So you'll see in the video I try and place the ski down as opposed to letting it slam and drop, and then as soon as that ski touches I try and lift the other one up straight away, as opposed to leaving 2 feet on the ground for too long. And I don't jump between the two, and I can get loads of precision with that, and I can really get a feel for what's going on under my feet, as well as speeding up that movement from edge to edge. So similar to the Stork Turn, I do I call it a tip and tail. I don't really have a name for it, but basically it's like a half Dolphin Turn. So again, timed with the pole plant, I lift the tip of the inside ski up, and then I lift the tail of the inside ski up and put the tip down in the same turn, then repeat on the other side. I find it's pretty similar to the Stork Turn, but it adds a little bit of fore and aft, and it's a little bit easier than a full Dolphin Turn once you get the coordination right. So we're adding fore and aft in, but still working on edge to edge. I find this quite useful. So the next one is a full dolphin turn, so lots of fore and aft, get the tips of the skis off the ground, and then that pulling of the feet back once in the air, I find that's the key. Okay, so if we're going to link it into moguls, certainly when we start thinking about absorption, that retraction and pulling the feet back towards you and getting back over the top, over the front, it helps with range of movement and helps you stay in control in the bumps. So the other on-piste drill I've got is, I call it a powerful braquage slide. But basically it's just pivoting the skis and sliding down the hill a little bit. I'm trying to travel pretty much straight down the fall line and just rotate the feet. But I suppose the idea is to do it powerfully and not necessarily do it on a smooth surface. So the piste I'm on is a little bit chopped up, it's quite late in the day, and give it some speed, like powerful rotations, so I'm still turning quite quickly even though I'm not using much edge. So still on the piste, I've got a basic jump turn where you just extend and get your skis off the ground. What I like to do is when I jump, I like to try and land really softly and quietly and then instantly spring into the next one. Sometimes it's quite easy to start doing a dolphin turn. I really try not to, simply because you'll see sometimes it's good to catch air in the bumps deliberately or on variable terrain indeed, and obviously you want to stay balanced, so having a bit too much off the tails to get your spring isn't necessarily the best thing at speed. So staying on the piste, as well as all the sort of drills you can do, what I like to do is just take that basic short turn, add in some quick turns, and then go back to the basic short turn. Sometimes even go bigger, so travel across the slope and call it rhythm changes. And basically in a natural bump field, it's not always the best route to go straight down the fall line. There might be rocks, there might be bumps that aren't necessarily as nice as others, people, avalanche debris, all that sort of stuff. So the ability to sort of not necessarily follow the arc of the ski, dictate your route and decide where you're going to go and try and keep a fluid run from point A to point B. I find if you've got that sort of rhythm change practiced on the piste, it's much easier to put into practice when you actually need to do it in the variable terrain. So I find skiing a bit of powder is great for feeling what's going on under your feet, which really does help in the bumps and certainly in the varied terrain, where sometimes you might get quite a lot of pressure on the outside ski and then it gives and you've got to adjust all the time. And skiing powder on a piste ski, I find that really useful. I like to, certainly on my left turn, I like to throw my shoulder into the turn, and when I'm in powder on a set of piste skis, I can't do that because my inside ski sinks and dives and wants to hook up and wants to throw me over the front. So I'm trying to stay nice and centered and just be really precise between the feet left and right and just trying to hold it. Obviously it's not as fun as if I was on a big fat sort of 115, 120 foot underfoot ski with a huge rocker, but it really helps my precision. So from training purposes, it's really good. So obviously if we look at moguls themselves, there's loads and loads of different ways of skiing them, and in my opinion there's no better or worse way, no right or wrong. There's lots. So I think it depends on how you're feeling, how confident you are, how steep the pitch is, how big the bumps are, as to how you want to ski it. There's no right or wrong. So I'll just go through a few of my favourite ways of doing it, but there's still more. But these are mine. The way to just sort of get in there, I find, is just, I call it pivoting and sliding. So I'm going from top to top, and I'm just rotating with not much under my feet on the top of the bump, sliding to the next and then the next. And it's a good way of just checking out the snow and looking for various lines. So I might start off at the top of a big long pitch, doing a little bit of that before I start getting into the rut lines or trying to ski it in different ways. But it's a really good way because I can control my speed quite well. I get my skis facing from point A to point B in a short space of time. They don't spend much time in the fall line, so I can ski it slowly. Just like pivoting and sliding on the tops, I find you can also do it in a rut line, and I find it's a good way of sort of getting into skiing a rut line and not necessarily picking up too much speed, and you're able to keep it under control a little bit more. So I try and turn really early around the back of the bump and then try and slide as much as the rut will let me until the tails of my skis hit that snow wall, and then I'll repeat and go the other way. And yes, I am dictated a little bit by the line in terms of the speed of my descent, but I'm trying to go as slow as I can. I find it's quite a good introduction to just getting into line and learning to ski faster. So a lot of people associate bump skiing with fall line, super fast skiing with relatively flat skis. I'm actually a big fan of the rounded turn, using the front side of the bumps to get a bit of deflection and travel across the slope a little bit. So I'm doing more like a sort of 3, sometimes even a 4 meter radius turn in the bumps, and I find it really nice, and you can use a nice blend of steering and angulation as well, and it feels good, and it's quite a nice way of skiing it. And because you're rounding your turns off quite nicely, it works quite well on big bumps, especially when you need to absorb quite a lot. You can sort of reduce that absorption a little bit and just travel around a little bit more, and it's quite a nice feeling. So it's obviously not all about going quick in the bumps, but I think if you can move really quickly or really fast, you find it easier. Okay, it's easier to slow things down than it is to try and speed it up, especially if you've not got a fast range of movement. So there's lots of different exercises you can do, but simply just trying to do a shorter than short turn, so really rein it in to sort of like a 2 meter radius and get it really punchy, but still keep the same form that you had from the bigger turns. I find that works really well for me. So when I want to ski a bump line fast and direct, what I like to do is choose a nicer bump line as such, so something that's not too steep, something where the bumps aren't too big and they're relatively rhythmical. Because I need to move my feet really fast, it's very difficult to do that with a full range of absorption, so choosing some smaller bumps I find a lot easier, and I like to sort of look at the first sort of 5, 6, even 7 bumps before I set off, and I try and keep this sort of conveyor belt going. So I'm trying to look at least 3, possibly hopefully 4 bumps ahead, so I can keep my rhythm and keep seeing that line so I know exactly where I'm going. I'm thinking more about how fast I travel and where I turn as opposed to the movements that I'm making, because I simply don't have time to think about technique. So one thing I like to do is find either a bumpy piece towards the end of the day that's been chopped up quite a bit, or get off the side of the piece so it's something that's got some tracks in it and a few bumps, a few undulations, and basically try and ski it fast. It gets you out your comfort zone a little bit, but it increases your confidence. If you can handle skiing that sort of stuff at speed, up here it really helps when things go wrong. 9 times out of 10 when things go wrong in the bumps, it's because we haven't moved quick enough and we've picked up too much speed, and then suddenly we're on the back foot, we're on a roller coaster ride trying to rein it in. And if you're comfortable traveling fast in that sort of environment, it helps you keep your cool and keep your composure, and obviously we're getting into sort of the mental game here, but I find certainly with confidence it really helps. So just practicing, just generally trying to ski that sort of stuff, maybe more like a sort of giant slalom sized turn just to carry your speed. Even though most times bumps are associated with tighter turns and fall line skiing, I think doing the bigger turns, even trying to carve sometimes, is really good for your sort of variable terrain skiing and your overall performance. So I think in deep bumps the key is that full range of movement, so not being afraid to let the legs come up and then getting that sort of retracting movement on the go, so you get the tips to dive down so that you can then extend into the hollows. I think it's really important to try and feel like you're going to stay loose and allow for that whole range of movement to happen, as opposed to trying to stay in control too much and stay in the front of the boots, because I find it blocks that range of movement and you get bucked and bounced around, so you're going to find it a lot more difficult. But getting loose, let the legs come up, pull the feet back. It's a little bit like riding a bike backwards in my head. I find that works well in deep bumps. Sometimes you might fully absorb and you still get kicked, but I think if you just hold your form and keep your composure, you can usually get away with it. Sometimes, especially if you're going quite fast and direct, once you've fully absorbed, there's nothing else you can do, so you've just got to hold it. But obviously with a full range of movement, you can try and keep it as impact free as possible. So I think it's cool to sometimes catch air mid-run, and I think you can almost make a run seem more fluid by doing it, but also it feels nice. So I like to just let it happen as opposed to trying to force it and look for jumps as such. And sometimes you would probably gap one or two bumps, sometimes you'd land on the downside of the same one, but just trying to make it nice and fluid and taking off one edge and then landing on the other works really well, as opposed to jumping with two flat skis. It kind of, if you do that, it doesn't really flow right, in my opinion. So I think it's nice for sort of versatility's sake to be able to do a few short turns or quick fast turns in the bumps, and then deviate and deliberately alter your line as opposed to letting the bumps dictate your descent. I think it ups the confidence. I think it's really good for training purposes. So that's my project done. Big thank you to Jordan for filming it all, and I guess I hope this video starts off a trend where other IASI members will do videos just to increase the IASI resources. Cool, thanks for watching.